In this video, we look at the President, the PMs, and the rules of law. On your screen, you see three presidents. Xi Jinping of China, former President Yoon Suk Yeol of South Korea, and Japan's current Prime Minister, who will be replaced by the first female Prime Minister in Japanese history. So about me. I am Gabe Haines, a political science and communications major. As a political science and communications major, the rule of law is important to me, is very important to me, since it is the fundamental tool ensuring a nation's leader and political agenda, along with their philosophy, do not infringe upon the rights of their people. No man is above the law, and no man is below it. Nor do we ask any man's permission when we ask him to obey it. That's a quote by President Theodore Roosevelt. And there's another quote by Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton. Energy in the executive is a leading character in the definition of good government. It is essential to the protection of the community against foreign attacks. It is not less essential to the steady administration of the laws, to the protection of property against those irregular and high-handed combinations which sometimes interrupt the ordinary course of justice, to the security of liberty against the enterprises and assaults of ambition, of faction, and of anarchy. And first, I want to ask the essential question: how is each nation structured? Because before we look into the rule of law aspect, we need to understand just how each nation is structured and how they function. So, of course, like we mentioned, let's look at China, Japan, and South Korea, the key facts and figures. So, Japan, the capital, of course, is Tokyo. The population is 123,360,000. The government philosophy is a unitary parliamentary constitutional monarchy. That is their title that they have used. The Prime Minister is Ishida, who will be replaced by the first female Prime Minister relatively soon after they won an election just yesterday. The Emperor is Naruhito. The legislation is the National Diet. The House of Councilors is the upper house, and the House of Representatives is the lower house. Next is China, whose capital is Beijing, with a population of 1,408,280,000. The government philosophy: a unitary communist state. The president is, of course, Xi Jinping, and the legislature is the National People's Congress. The political party is the CCP, or Chinese Communist Party. And lastly is South Korea, whose capital is Seoul. Population is 52,081,799. The government philosophy is a unitary presidential republic. The president is Lee Jae-myung. The legislature is the National Assembly. So the rule of law definition. What is the rule of law? Well, the rule of law is a durable system of laws, institutions, norms, and community commitment that delivers four universal principles: accountability, just law, open government, and accessible and impartial justice. And that is defined by the World Justice Project. So the first one is accountability. The government, as well as private actors, are accountable under the law. And all these are defined by the World Justice Project. Next is just law. The law is clear, publicized, and stable, and is applied evenly. It ensures human rights as well as property, contract, and procedural rights. Next is open government, the process by which the law is adopted, administered, adjudicated, and enforced are accessible, fair, and efficient. And lastly is accessible and impartial justice. Justice is delivered timely by competent, ethical, and independent representatives and neutrals who are accessible and have adequate resources and reflect the makeup of the communities they serve. So the first one is Japan. Strengthening the rule of law is one of the pillars of Japanese foreign policy. Opposing unilateral changes by force of which prohibited and frowned upon. And certain examples are territorial integrity, focused economic stability, protectionism of the Japanese civilians, free and open international trade commitments. So, Japan's PM and the rule of law playbook. Parliamentary system under Japan's constitution was established in 1947. The PM is selected by the Diet. So, Prime Minister, whoever happens to be the leader of the ruling party in the National Diet, is selected. For the longest time, the Liberal Democratic Party ruled Japan, and most of the PMs were chosen by their party. But since they have been subjected to losses in their legislature, given the fact that they have lost the PM control and will be replaced by a new one. The cabinet and the bureaucracy holds most of executive authority and powers. The executive operates with a balanced technocratic bureaucracy which promotes stability and equity, and clear constitutional framework outlines regulations within the executive to operate comfortably. Next is China. Chinese law cannot restrict arbitrary exercise of power at the highest levels. The CCP governs every aspect of Chinese political philosophy. From 1980 to present, modern legal codes have been used for economic progress. Political cases and human rights, however, are still relatively strictly controlled, unfortunately. So next is China's President Rule of Law Playbook. The Chinese Communist Party, or the CCP, still remains above the state. Executive power is not separated from the party. The State Council, headed by the Premier, functions as the chief administrative body. Party policy is decided through the State Council and not independent decisions. The CCP General Secretary, President, and Chairman of the Central Military Commission are all held by Xi Jinping, who, of course, is the President, pictured on your right, and concentrates power in a single leader. The CCP controls all three branches of government, and there is no separation of powers. Unlike the United States, the executive, the judicial, and the legislative are all separated, but they still work hand in hand. Here in China, there is no such thing. The executive often uses laws as the administrative tool to enforce policy priorities by the party. Next is South Korea. The Constitution of the Korean Republic established three independent branches of government: the executive, legislature, and judiciary, to provide checks and balances, just like in the United States, where we have three branches of government. Judges are required, when practicing, to base their rulings on the Constitution and the laws. The Constitution grants protections to judges from being removed from office, with the exceptions of specific circumstances, such as impeachment or criminal acts. The Constitutional Court's responsibility is to review issues of constitutionality and provide important checks on government power. And protections include prohibitions against the ex post facto laws and self-incrimination, along with the right to counsel and the console and habeas corpus. And of course, South Korea's president's law playbook is now the next. The executive is based on a presidential system modeled after the United States, and modeled after a lot of countries too. The president is both head of the state and head of government, and is elected directly by the people for a 5-year term. In the United States, U.S. President Donald Trump is elected for 4 years, and every president is elected for 8 years, assuming they don't serve non-consecutive terms. But here in South Korea, they serve 5 years. The president will be rightfully impeached and convicted just like the U.S. president. And for example, last year, in December, Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment and conviction was over the declaration of martial law, which he declared. So he was convicted. He was impeached and convicted, and the new prime minister, the new president, was sworn into office soon after. Legal and civic institutions are granted the power to check executive abuse. However, corruption remains a recurring problem. In conclusion, Each nation's executive philosophy reflects its political history and relationship to the rule of law. China, the executive power, is defined by party ideology, just like the CCP. Law is used as a governing instrument. In South Korea, executive power is defined by democracy. Law is a check and safeguard. Japan, executive power defined by procedure and consensus. Law is an administrative framework. Together, all three of these nations reside and work together, even if their philosophy and types of government influence the way they view the world within and around them. Authoritarian legalism. China. Democratic accountability. South Korea. Bureaucratic constitutionalism. Japan. By understanding all of these philosophies, we're able to dissect how each nation functions and whether or not their people are safe and secure within the confines of their borders.